Gracie and I are at the coal mines today, and where Gracie's patiently laying there is the doorway to the guard room, which is on the north end of this 4-room cottage. The cottage shows on the 1842 map of the coal mines. Its actual date of construction is not known, but we can guess it's probably around circular 1840. The building was constructed entirely of brick, which would have been sourced from Port Arthur, but the lime mortar may have been produced here at the coal mines at the lime kiln. The building is approximately 15.5 metres long and 4.6 metres wide. Apart from the guard room, there are 3 more rooms, which we'll look at in a minute. So as I said, Gracie's sitting in the doorway of the guard room. It was 4.6 metres along the length here and 4.9 metres heading down that direction. You can see under Gracie there's a couple of large flat blocks of sandstone. This may have been just where the doorway was itself, or they may have had a sandstone floor in the guard room itself covering everything. So let's just pop into the guard room and we'll come through to here, ignoring this tree, and there was a fireplace located at the back here. Well, let's just go around back out that front door, and as we head out on that side there would have been a window. So travelling here past Gracie, we come down here and we can see sandstone blocks that were used to build up this part of the embankment, and then the bricks were laid on top around the edge of the building. There's a couple of reasons why the guard room was placed here. One function the guards would have had would be look after the prisoners that were in the solitary cells, which were located over there. And a second task they would have had as guards is to look after the prisoners that may have been in the cell block that was behind the guard room and police office that was located beside the guard room. Now this cell is approximately 5 metres long and 2 metres wide. It was situated a little bit further back in this direction originally. It's probably about 1 metre from the edge of the building itself. I've got 0.5 metre, but the embankment's gone here completely and it's just covered in dead vegetation. There's nothing that I can see to film. Now why would you have a cell block here when you've got numerous solitary cells and wards up there for the prisoners to stay in? This cell block is used for convicts that were already at the coal mines, and they carried out an offence down here. And here they awaited the trial and sentencing by the magistrate, which was carried out in the police office, which we'll have a look in a minute. Until found guilty, the prisoner could not be held in the solitary cells, but in practice it did occur from time to time prior to their trial occurring. So let's have a look now at the police office. The magistrate's office would have been the first building that most of the convicts would have seen when arriving at the coal mines. They would have been marched up from the jetty down there, the 1834 jetty. The path followed a similar track to where the steps are now that go down to the foreshore. And they would have been brought to this location here, and then they would have been greeted by the magistrate and the superintendent of the coal mines. The magistrate would have read out what the regulations were for the coal mines, and that way if the convicts broke those regulations in future, ignorance was no excuse. So let's have a look inside the police office. I believe the doorway was possibly located here. And as we walk into the room, the fireplace would have been situated here on the left, which would backed up against the fireplace that was located in the guard room, which is on this side here. Now, opposite the fireplace over here would have been a magistrate's bench, like a judge's bench in a courtroom, but just smaller. And the accused convict would have been made to stand in a dock a small dock, which I suggest was probably located over there somewhere. And at the back of the building there was a window, as well as a window at the front here. So the magistrate would be residing where Gracie is now. The charges would have been read and then the sentence pronounced, which in most cases was guilty. The punishments could be a couple of days in solitary up to 30 days. The lash may have been used as a punishment in many cases, especially for trying to escape. It could be up to 100 lashes, but the average amount was around 30. The convict may also have had their prison sentence time extended by months, 6 months plus in some cases. So let's head back out of the police office and let's have a look at the room next door. Now, just here you see a sign, office and guard room, circular 1842. Well, they've got the right description and the right date, but this block should be down here more, where the dividing rope is between those two rooms. Anyway, let's head back to this brick room. And the doorway is approximately here. Where Gracie's laying there is the middle of the room. On the right hand side was a fireplace, and there was a window located at the back. Today is one of the few times down here where I don't have to guess the occupant of a room. I know for a fact that a James Hurst resided here with his family. James Hurst was also known as Quiet Jimmy. James Hurst was originally a miner in England, sentenced for highway robbery in 1828. By 1840 he was appointed overseer of mining operations at the mines after receiving his ticket of leave. By 1842 he received a full pardon, and in 1843 he married a Mary Ann Hadford, who was 14 years old at the time. They had 4 children together while they resided at the coal mines, though only 2 survived. 2 boys, William and Joseph, died before they reached the age of 6 months and are known to be buried close to here. Now the room size is 4.9 metres by 4.6 metres, which is the same size as the police office. It's quite hard to imagine mum, dad and 3 kids in a room 5 metres by 4.5 metres, and it's a little bit even more hard to imagine that the children would have been playing outside here opposite the solitary cells, and they would have seen the solitary cell prisoners being brought out for exercise for 30 minutes twice a day. So certainly a different time back then. Now heading out of the Hurst room, we'll go to the final room of the cottage. And next door to the Hurst family also lived another overseer by the name of Henry Miller. He was appointed an overseer in 1841, again a convict who had gained his ticket of leave. He was despised by all down here, as he used to set the convicts up for unfair punishments. He was the carrying gang overseer in charge of the tree felling to be used for props and crossbars in the mines, as well as the general building purposes. Now the room was only 3.8 long and 4.6 wide, as opposed to the other rooms here, which are all around 4.9 long. Now the 1842 map does not show a fireplace in this room. It shows the Hurst fireplace, but from what I interpret of it, it does not show a fireplace in this back room here. And what's more is it doesn't have a doorway at the front. It has a window at the back, but no doorway at the front. And it seems to show on that drawing from 1842 of a doorway situated just here. This means that Henry Miller, to enter or exit his room, would have to pass through this doorway here and past the Hurst family, mum, dad and the 2 kids, before exiting out the doorway here. Now, how did the situation arise that Henry Miller had to enter and exit through the Hearst living room, kitchen, bedroom? I believe what happened, and this is only guessing, but the original plans for this structure here only show a cell as a complete room on its own, then the guard room, then the police office. These two rooms at the back weren't shown on the original plans. I think those plans were sent down to the coal mines, and then it was decided that a overseer's quarter would be built at the end of the building, and a large room was built where Gracie is now, which is the Hearst room, and a smaller room was built at the back. I believe that smaller room was originally intended to be possibly a storeroom for the overseer. There are two storerooms which are rooms that have no fireplaces located in them, one at the commanding officer's quarters and one at the superintendent's quarters. Now, they are slightly smaller than this end room that Henry Miller stayed in, but that may have been the original plan, and that's why there's no doorway coming from the outside, only between the rooms. And then over time, the level of assistant supervisors and overseers, the numbers increased down here, but the whole story of the coal mines is that the accommodation never kept up with the amount of personnel that was down here until right at the end, and it come to a situation where Henry Miller had to have this back room, as there was no other rooms for the overseers down here at the time. Having been mumbling over some bare grass with some ropes around it doesn't give you a true idea of what a room that the Hearst family would have lived in would have looked like back then. So we'll pop up to the other side of the penitentiary area and try to give you a better picture of what they resided in. I'm now at the structure I call the civilian officers' quarters. There is a video on this one. And where Gracie's sitting there is a room that would have been similar in size to where the Hearst family resided. There's a back door on this building here, but I don't believe there was a back door on their structure. There would have been a window on their room as opposed to no window here. But the fireplace would have been similar, if not the same as that one there. And it's approximately 5 metres up to where this dividing wall starts here. And in the case of their cottage, this back room here would have been the room that Henry Miller stayed in. It's probably a little bit bigger than what the one is down there, but it'll give you an idea of the total size. So, not unusual for families to share cottages down there, especially for the military, who had to share a large room with probably 50-60 soldiers' families up at the military barracks. Now, walking back out the doorway of the Hearst room, we come along here, and where my rope is on the right hand side, there would have been a wooden fence, and there was a garden surrounding the area between the cottage and the fence. I travelled around here. What type of garden, I don't know if it was a flower garden or a vegetable garden. It comes down here and it terminates at this area here where I have my rope in a rectangle. And what I believe this area here, as it shows on the 1842 map, is just a square little structure. I believe this would have been the dunny they would have used. There are no brick remains showing any type of foundation, but I suggest also it was probably just built of timber. Now, if we walk a little bit further past the toilet, at the back of the Miller Hearst rooms, there's a small outline of bricks, and this, I suggest, is the grave site of William and Joseph Hearst. Now, how did I come up with this theory? Well, a reporter from the Mercury visited the mines in 1858 with James Hearst, who had taken a lease from the government to mine the coal here. The reporter noted the following: "We passed the cottage, now entirely concealed by the evergreens which have crept over it in every direction, formerly occupied by Mr. Hurst, and the enclosed grave in which 2 of his children are buried." Now, even though there's brick rubble everywhere round here, this area here, which is probably about ½ a metre, the bricks themselves seem to be in a vertical pattern as opposed to horizontal, like you can see there. And this area here, I suggest, will be a bit big enough to bury 2 infant babies. Now, behind that gravesite, well, I believe it's a gravesite, where Gracie's sitting now, there's some sandstone blocks. Now, some of the reinforcement, as we saw before on the guard room, was sandstone, but there doesn't seem to be much left at all, if there was any, around the this end of the building of the cottage. What I'd suggest here is this was a sentry box. And before I start talking about this one here, let's pop up to the other side of the penitentiary and have a look at what a sentry box looked like. I'm at the other side of the penitentiary now, and where Gracie's sitting now is a sentry box. It's approximately 3.5 by 2.7 metres, and the guard or guards would have sat in here keeping an eye on things that were happening all around them. On top of this, there would have been a wooden shingle roof that allowed the guards to stay dry in the rain and give them some shade during the summer months. So knowing what a sentry box looks like, we'll pop back down behind the brick cottage. So I've shaped this in the similar fashion of what the sentry box was up there, and there's 2 convicts that mentioned that there was a sentry box on the embankment on the ocean side of the penitentiary. Now it's slightly sloped now, but I believe back in those days this area here was a lot flatter, and it was a good position for a sentry post in the fact that they had to look down there at the 1834 jetty and the beach beyond. Now you can't see anything now with these scraggy old trees, but let's just have a look at the other side of these trees and it'll give you a better picture of what the sentry was looking at. From its vantage point on the sentry post, the sentry would have seen the 1834 jetty, another jetty that was built further along, and he would have seen all the way to the commissariat store, which is close to Plunket Point. The main reason why they kept a good eye here was because on the 1834 jetty at one time was moored a whaleboat, which is a big dinghy, and it had a little lantern on it at night time, but that whaleboat was used to go out to the ships to get the supplies when it was too rough for the ships or barges to dock at the jetty. So the sentry kept an eye on that, but he also kept an eye on in case any boats or ships were trying to do unauthorised access to the coal mines that may have been used to help the convicts escape. Now back up here in front of the Henry Miller's room, there's a sign that says Engineers Store, Circular 1842. Well, it's got the title and the date right, but the actual engineer store is right down there where Gracie's sitting at the moment. So we'll pop around outside of the fence that enclosed the southern end of the cottage, past the dunny, and this is the engineer's store here. Now the engineer's store is approximately 7 metres by 4 metres. It was a timber structure. It was a temporary timber structure it was listed as. It had a single doorway here, and Gracie's sitting in the middle of it now. Now it does slope away quite dramatically here now, but back in 1840 odd it would have been far more level than what you're seeing at the moment. There's bits of brick rubble on that here, but I don't think this had anything to do with the store itself. As I said before, it was a temporary timber structure only.
Now I have a couple of photos here that I'd like to share with you. This first photo here shows the remains of the guard room on the left hand side of the photograph. You can see what remains of the doorway to the guard room, as well as the wood shingle roof. It's almost looked like it's been cut off at the back, but there is a slight bit of wall remaining where the guard room marries up to the police office. The building in the middle of the photo there, that was a guard room that was situated in the middle of the penitentiary, and that was only 2 rooms, but the cottage that we looked at today would have been built in the similar style and manner in regards to doors, windows, roof, as to what that building was built. This second photo was taken from the commissariat store down close to Plunket Point, so it's really the water side of the penitentiary. And if you look at the left hand side of the photo, you can see the remains of the guard room there with the pointed white roof, the large opening where the doorway was, as well as a window that's on the left looking out towards the ocean. Now behind that, I'm not too sure if it'll come up on YouTube, but there's a wall, and a brick wall, and the brick wall is coloured white, which leads me to believe that the rooms were lime washed, which was quite usual at the coal mines. And then if you just have a look at the embankment there, it's quite flat. It doesn't show where the cell was behind the guard room police office, but the area there is quite flat, and a little bit further along from there you can see a flat area where a sentry post would have could have been comfortably built.
So there you have it, the guard room, police office, 2 overseers' quarters, possible grave site, possible sentry post, a dunny, and the engineer's store at the coal mines. What do you got, Gracie? Small wombat or a large rabbit? Let's have a look.